Hi there, Steve Coffin here. Today I want to talk about the plateau, the doldrums, when we feel we're not making progress in a language. And, I am, I guess, considered a polyglot because I speak a number of languages. I have preferred the term linguist, but polyglot seems increasingly accepted, although many English speakers don't know the term. But the idea, some people may have the idea that polyglots just kind of breeze through learning new languages. That is not the case. I think our path through acquiring languages is not unlike that of other people. We have that initial period. I've spoken about this upside down hockey stick, that initial period, the blade of the hockey stick, where we make rapid progress. We acquire new words. We get a sense, what was just total noise all of a sudden becomes comprehensible to some degree. And then we hit this stage where we've gone through, like in my case would be the mini stories on Link. I've gone through this basic material. I've acquired some words. I can say a few things. But now I have to acquire so many words in order to reach genuine fluency, or at least to be able to understand movies and to be able to have, random conversations on many subjects. And that actually is a long, long road. And so once we hit that, and we some people simply stay in the learner material and never progress beyond that, but other people want to push themselves into this more difficult material. And as they do so, they start to realize that whereas in the initial period, high frequency words are high frequency, so they appear more often. But then, because the frequency with which verbs or words appear in any text drops off very, very quickly. So pretty soon we have to acquire lots of relatively low frequency words. And therefore, it takes a long, long time to move from, it might be like A2 to B2. That's a long, long road. And very often we have the feeling that we're not getting anywhere. And some people refer to this as the plateau. I would also call it the doldrums. I remember from elementary school, we were taught about the trade winds, east, west, west, east trade winds. And in between along the equator was an area where often there would be no winds. And so in days of sailing ships, of course, that means that without wind, the ships aren't moving. And so you get into this stage in language learning where you feel you're not moving. And I'm kind of in that stage right now with my Arabic, Persian, and Turkish. I've done the mini stories in the three languages. I have a sense now of how those languages work. I have some vocabulary. Forget it, relearn it, forget it, relearn it. But I have a bit of a sense of the language. I'm pushing myself now to more difficult content. In the case of Arabic, I go to France 24 and Al Jazeera to their podcasts, which I then have automatically transcribed. Similarly with Farsi, I go to Fardo and I do the same. Turkish, we seem to have a lot of good content in our library at Link, so I simply look to see what's there and study what's there. But it's difficult. It is difficult, especially in Arabic. It's the most difficult because it's a totally different language system and it's a different writing system. Persian is Indo-European language. Turkish is at least written in the Latin alphabet. So those two are easier than Arabic. So, what do I do? At times I get discouraged. I'm not getting anywhere. It seems almost as difficult now as it was before, even though on my lesson page, I can see that, there are fewer blue words, there are more yellow words, more white words. So I think the first thing that I have to do as I'm in the plateau is I just have to stay the course. I have to remember that when I was learning Czech or Russian, for example, or Greek, there was a long period when I was listening to, podcasts that I didn't really understand, and I kept listening to them, and it seemed like I would never get to where I could just enjoyably listen to a podcast and understand it. And yet, in the end, I got there. So the first thing is that, and I, as someone who has learned quite a few languages to varying levels, I'm confident that I will eventually get to a stage where I can understand movies, I can listen to podcasts, I can read newspapers, and I can speak with mistakes. So the first thing is to stay the course. The second thing is to, have certain sort of habits that you automatically do, that you have to do. So that's why I force myself. I'm not always able to do it, but I've tried to force myself to create 100 links a day in each language. It's just a mechanical thing. I have to do it. even if sometimes I cheat and I just go from blue word to blue word to blue word without reading the whole text, planning to go back and read it later on, just so that I maintain that habit. Similarly, I have a habit of looking to see what's new in the Turkish library. You know, I go to our lesson feed in Turkish, see what's there, pick something new, and go through it. Similarly, I like to grab a podcast from Al Jazeera or France 24 and listen to it. Don't understand it very well, but it's just one of these things. It's like something new. I think we like things that are new. I find it more enticing to listen to a new podcast that I understand imperfectly rather than to go. I have the Asimil that I have transcribed, but it's uninteresting. It's stuff that was written long ago. It's not interesting. So I have this habit. I go to the podcast. But so stay the course, create some habits, remind yourself why you're learning. So I was feeling a bit discouraged. Should I give up on Turkish and Persian and focus on Arabic because Arabic is more difficult? And then I was in a pharmacy the other day, and there's this Iranian lady, and so we say a few things in Persian. I realize how much my Persian, it's not as good as it was. So that gets me going back to my Persian. And then she said she was interested in learning Turkish, and of course, and then I'm reminded of the relationship between these languages. And my wife is watching this Turkish movie on Netflix about the Seljuk Turks in Anatolia fighting the Crusaders, and then I'm reminded that the Seljuk Empire included modern day Iran and Arab-speaking areas and Anatolia, and so there's this tremendous historical connection. And this lady she's Iranian, she wants to learn Turkish, and so I'm reminded why I'm doing it. I'm doing it to discover something about these languages. So mastery of these is very elusive, far away, but it is interesting to me to be discovering these. So I'm interested in what I'm trying to discover. That's my goal. I know it's worthwhile. I have certain habits that I've created, and I'm staying the course. So with that, I have to plow through. I'm in the doldrums. The wind isn't blowing. I don't feel I'm getting anywhere, but I have to stay with it. I can also do some things to make it better. So, for example, I had a podcast that was out about politics. By the way, I'm trying to figure out where the camera is and make sure my eye stays on the camera rather than the center of my iPhone. It's a bit difficult. But, so I downloaded this podcast from France 24. There was a discussion about politics in Lebanon with a Lebanese politician. And I got the automatic transcript, and it's very inaccurate, so it's difficult to make sense of it as I try to read through, although I save words. And so I said, well, you know what, I should get a newspaper article on this. So I Google newspapers in Lebanon. Up comes a Wikipedia page, and it has a list of newspapers in Lebanon in Arabic, French, and Armenian. So I choose the Arabic list, and there's a newspaper called El Sharq, the East, and there's an article about the political situation in Lebanon. So I import that article into Link. So now I'm going through some of the same material, but now it's written in a way that makes sense because this is an actual newspaper article. Now I feel I have a better chance to make sense of this automatically transcribed podcast and to listen to the podcast. So I think these are the kinds of things that we can do. I think in the new year at Link, we're going to make the library much better. It's going to be easier to find stuff. Hopefully we can get people who have good content to sell it across Link. I would happily pay. I'm paying $10 an hour to have this stuff automatically transcribed. I went to Upwork, which is an outsourcing website, to see if I could find someone who would transcribe Persian and Arabic. And I said, I want your cost or your price per audio hour, and they come back and they say, I'll charge $10 an hour. That doesn't tell me how much they would charge to do a whole audio hour of a podcast. One person said it's $100 US an hour. I'm certainly not going to pay that. So the other way is we have, for example, Lingualism, who's going to, hopefully we can arrange with him and others. I spoke to someone who has Turkish material as well, where they can sell their content across Link. I would happily spend $10, $20 to get audio and text access to good content for learning these languages. So these are some of the things that we can do, to help us along. At any rate, when we're in the doldrums, when we're at that plateau, you have to convince yourself that what you're doing is worth it. You got to be sure you know why you're doing it. You've got to have certain habits that you essentially do every day, whether it be creating links or listening to podcasts, looking for what's new in the library or the lesson feed at Link. And remember that it is very worthwhile. Just the other day, I was looking at a picture from an old timers hockey tournament that I was at in 2006, and I saw all of our pictures there, and I said, "Gee, that's 13 years ago." And I think, today I am more excited about learning about new cultures, new languages. It gives me so much reward, which I didn't have back then when I hadn't yet really started my, intense study of languages. So it does give you a lot, and your goal can be mastery. What you like doing might be, you might enjoy going to class, you might enjoy doing Anki decks, you might enjoy whatever, but do things that you enjoy doing, stay the course, and you will eventually get through the plateau. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.